tell us about yourself. Who are you? Give us an intro into your life, and then tell us about Hearts of Mist.
Okay, so I guess I'm a freelance writer, editor, and website owner. Yeah, I kind of spend my days either writing or when I'm not writing, helping other authors, whether that's through editing their books or doing manuscript assessments and stuff, or through the work that I do through Writer's Edit. And Writer's Edit, I guess, for those of you who don't know, is a online platform that offers advice to authors and indie publishers and freelance writers. Heart of Mist is a young adult fantasy book which has just been released. It follows the story of Bleak, who's a 19-year-old girl who has magical powers, and it's set in a realm where magic is forbidden. So all sorts of trouble kind of happens, and you kind of just follow Bleak along her journey.
That's awesome. Have you started writing the next one?
Yes, I have. That's what I've been doing today, actually. So it's very fresh in my mind. I have to keep making sure I don't spoil it because I forget that not everybody has read the first book. Yeah. So no, I've started writing it, and I'm hoping to finish it in the next month and a half, like the first draft, that is. Sorry. So there's a lot of work to go on it. Still, I'm hoping to have it out this time next year. So the idea is Heart of Mist is the first in a planned trilogy. So I'd like to have one out per year. So this time next year, the book 2 will be out.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your ideas from?
I guess I get my ideas from all over the place, really. I very much believe in kind of going after inspiration rather than waiting for it to kind of strike you. So I'm always kind of actively wondering, like, what if this happened, or kind of turning things that I experience into stories and kind of making them bigger and grander, and especially with the fantasy element there. Your imagination can just kind of run free with that stuff. But then, of course, there are those like random lightning bolt moments where you do get an idea out of nowhere and you kind of run with it. But definitely I try and take inspiration from whatever I possibly can.
I think what if is the best question ever.
Absolutely.
One that we don't ask enough.
No, I know. Or you get a bit carried away and you ask too much, and then you kind of go down the rabbit hole of crazy ideas.
Yeah. What is your writing process like? Do you plot and plan, or are you a planster?
I'm definitely a planner. And I think that's, for me anyway, that's really important, particularly with writing a series. So like I said, 3 books, and I try and plan the kind of skeleton in each book, so I know what's happening in each book, but also I've got to worry about then the overarching plot of 3 different books and the major storyline that goes across those 3 books. So yeah, I definitely try and plan all the major events in the books and kind of the character arcs and the settings and stuff. And recently I've just started using spreadsheets for my planning, which I never thought I would say. I'm very anti-spreadsheet usually, but it does make it so much easier. So, for example, on the book that I'm working on now, so book 2 in the Oromir Chronicles, I've got a basic plot down in one sheet. Then I've got like the list of all the characters, and then I've even got a tab for military strategies and stuff like that. So I'm kind of yeah, I'm getting a bit carried away probably with my plotting at the moment, but I definitely need that in order to keep that momentum and that motivation up when I'm writing. Yeah. And I mean, I still like to leave room for when a character takes you down a different road, or like you might be halfway through the book and get an idea for something else that could happen. And I try to stay open to that kind of stuff, but without the plotting and the planning, I think I would definitely not get nearly as much done. And I really like to feel productive and be able to tick things off my list. So yeah, as you can tell, I'm probably a bit overboard with the with the plotting and planning, but that's how I get stuff done.
I think it's the one thing that really helps prevent the whole writer's block.
Oh, absolutely.
But a good
Absolutely.
plan, you've always got somewhere to go.
Exactly.
Do you use any specific software like Scrivener, or do you just write in Word?
I used to write in Word, and now I just write in Google Docs because then it's accessible from everywhere. I've always wanted to try Scrivener. I know so many established writers rave about how wonderful it is, and it's got so many different features. Do you use it as well?
I use Scrivener. It makes keeping track of your book so easy. You've got a full outline of your book at all times, and so jumping around within your book is so easy. It is quite hectic. There's so much you can do with it that I don't even think I use half of the features. But as far as that's concerned, I don't think I could ever go back to just writing on Word or Google because of that.
Yeah, that everybody says that, and I know I probably, like, when I finally do start using it, I'm gonna be like kicking myself that I haven't been using it for the last like 10 years. But it just, when you've got so many things going on, just another learning curve seems really overwhelming. And I know that it'll take a while to get used to the features and learn the different things that you can do with it. So I've been putting it off, which I know I'll regret, but I just can't handle another thing right now.
Stick to what works.
Yeah, exactly. For the moment, anyway. One day I'll get there. But yeah, just for now, Google Docs, it does the job for me. And I know it's probably the same with Scrivener, but being able to access it from anywhere. Like, I work from a home office. I have a desk at another office in the city. So I'm from Sydney. So I commute sometimes where I do my freelance work. And then, it's nice to be able to not have to drag my laptop around everywhere and just kind of log on here and log on there.
What are common traps for aspiring writers?
That's a really interesting one. I think one that I tend to think of a lot lately, and particularly since I've done Heart of Mist, something that I fell into. So I don't know if this is something that everybody feels, but I definitely, when I first started my writing career, felt kind of pressured, not from any one particular person or source, I guess, but just from my experience in the industry that I'd had so far. I definitely felt pressured to write a certain book or in a certain genre is what I mean, really. So when I first started out, I wrote literary fiction. And, looking back on it now, that's the gift of hindsight, I guess. I definitely was writing that because I felt like if I wrote literary fiction, I would be taken more seriously, particularly as a female writer. And I wanted that kind of, I wanted to be taken seriously as a writer. And I thought the only way to do that was to write literary fiction, because that's what was getting the reviews, that's what's getting the recognition, that kind of stuff. And also, I guess I didn't want to be pigeonholed as one particular writer. And I think for me, I thought way too much about that at the beginning of my career. I was too worried about that. And I kind of forgot that what I was meant to be doing was writing what I loved reading. And I think that was the main thing for me that I kind of fell into and have only really, since doing Heart of Mist, have gotten out of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, completely. So if you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be?
It would be not to worry about any of that stuff, and that you should just absolutely write what you love reading, because people have said this to me. Like, when I talk about Heart of Mist, my face lights up and I get all expressive and carried away with talking about it. And one of my close friends actually said to me last night, we went out for some drinks or whatever, and she's like, yeah, whenever you used to talk about that other book that you were working on, you kind of face dropped and, you could tell that you weren't enjoying it. And now, you talk about Heart of Mist and your face just lights up. And I think that's a massive indicator that I'm finally on the right track and writing what I love reading and writing what I love writing. So I would definitely tell myself, don't worry about all that other stuff and just write what you love reading.
That's really great advice. Did publishing your first book change your process of writing in any way?
I don't think it did, I think I've always been quite methodical with how I write my books. And I'm already a very organized, almost to the OCD scale of things person. So yeah, I don't think it really changed how I was writing it all, or my process, because I was already quite methodical and organized, and that's just how I am.
Okay, cool. What is the best money that you have spent as a writer?
Oh, that's a hard one, because Heart of Mist is independently published. I spent money on a lot of things that a traditional publisher, traditionally published, author wouldn't have done. But for me personally, on this particular journey, the best money I spent, hands down, was on my editor and on my cover designer. They're two things that, particularly if you're independently published, if you don't spend the right amount of money on that kind of thing, it shows. And I didn't want my book to come across as unprofessional, or, not like, I mean, you've worked so hard on creating this book, you may as well spend the money at the end of it to make sure that you do it justice. So my editor was expensive, and rightly so, because she had, 20 plus years experience in the industry. She'd worked on some massive books, and I was happy to spend that money on her because she made that book that beautiful finished product that it is. And it's the same with my cover designer. So that's definitely for sure the best money I've ever spent so far.
And did you ever consider traditionally publishing your book?
I think when I was writing literary fiction, I actually had a publishing deal. I was going to have my book come out and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that, you give up a lot of control as a traditionally published author. You don't get a say in everything. I certainly felt on a number of times kind of not backed into a corner, but, like I wanted more control over the whole situation. And then when I started writing Heart of Mist, I just, from the get-go with that book, I was like, I definitely want to do this myself. I was approached by a number of publishers who'd read about the book on my blog, who were familiar with my work with Writer's Edit, because I do try to be really transparent about the whole journey of being an author and, what everything's like. And so I was approached by a number of different publishing companies and houses. Actually, one of the big five asked to read it and loved it. And I kind of sat there for a while and I felt really conflicted because, on one hand, it's really amazing to have the interest of one of those massive publishing houses. Yeah. But, I had kind of set up that dream that I was going to do it myself. So in the end, I kind of just said, oh, I'm sorry, I do want to do this myself. And I did. So, yeah, I definitely made like a well-informed decision. But, yeah, I was always going to self-publish Heart of Mist, I think.
Yes. No, I know. And I've seen so many books that have been traditionally published, but by small publishers, and the editing is shocking. The book never really goes anywhere. And for me, that's really sad, because I think a lot of authors dream of being traditionally published, from when they're little girls or little boys, and then to have your book turn out that way, I think can be really sad as well.
Oh, absolutely. The shame is that the indie published books that are really, really fantastic and have done all the right things don't always get the recognition that they deserve, or more so the media coverage, because a lot of bloggers, a lot of media outlets and things don't take that chance on the indie author, because I think they have all those stigmas in their mind about indie published books and things. Yeah. The results I had for Heart of Mist, in under 24 hours, it hit number 1 in all 3 of its categories on Amazon Australia, and it was in the top 20 for all of its categories on Amazon.com. And that's an indie published book, and I don't have a marketing budget. I didn't put a truckload of money behind it, and that's, if you had a look at the top 3 in those categories, and there was my book, and then there would be traditionally published books who have had marketing force behind them, then that's a really, it's an amazing thing. I was over the moon, and it just goes to show, if you put that effort in and you do things well and you do things right, then it's possible.
Yeah, I saw your book. It was right next to Harry Potter, and I mean
I know, it was crazy. It was crazy, and it was next to Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas, and I love Sarah J. Maas. Yeah. She's a big YA fantasy writer, so I saw that and I was like, wow, that's crazy. So it was a big thrill.
I think also, you know, there's a big mental shift that has to be made, because I've got this dream since I was a little girl to see my book on the bestsellers list in a bookstore, you know, standing up, looking at the books. And I think that dream has to change, because we live in such an online world now. And it's exactly like your book was now next to Harry Potter. That's basically it. That's fantastic. That's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. It does, you as the author have to kind of adapt as like new things come out, as like, you know, because what, like 10 years ago or something, I wouldn't have been able to do this with Heart of Mist. It wasn't nearly as accessible. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't simple to kind of go online and start up your own publishing company, start up your own website, or, you know, without any massive upfront costs to be able to publish a book. So, you know, all these things are changing and they're constantly changing. And so us as authors have to keep evolving and, you know, being open-minded about opportunities and things, because I think, you know, a couple of years ago, if you had have told me, oh, you know, you should self-publish, I would have gone, oh no, and I would have been really reluctant to let go of the same dream that you had. And now I'm so glad I did, because it's really liberating and it's really fun. It's awesome to kind of be in charge of your own, you know, path.
Yeah.
So,
oh, awesome.
Yeah.
What is the best advice you've received from someone else?
That's really hard, because I've got a lot of writing friends, and I did creative writing at university, and I run Writers Edit, which is like just chock-a-block full of writing advice. One that I've come back to a lot lately while I'm writing the second book, and I'm kind of back in that first draft mindset, is actually one of those like Ernest Hemingway quotes, which is, I think it's write drunk and edit sober.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, it's not like, you know, someone came and told me that. It's just something that I stumbled across online or whatever. But particularly for me at the moment, in that first draft stage again, it's really kind of liberating to remind yourself it's okay that this is messy and all over the place. It's okay that you don't quite know where that chapter's going or whatever. You fix that later. You know, enjoy it for what it is. Like, make a mess, like spill your drink all over it, whatever, you know. You're allowed to be kind of drunk on the fun of it at this stage, and later on you fix it up and you make it perfect. But I have to keep reminding myself that this is okay. This stage is meant to be messy. Yeah. And so that piece of advice, write drunk, edit sober, is something that I'm really kind of sticking to at the moment.
I love that. How many books have you written that are either unpublished or unfinished?
Okay, I love that question. That's fantastic. As you can probably tell from my rambling and how, you know, organized I claim to be, if I start something, I generally finish it. So I think I've got about 5 manuscripts that I wrote that are finished that never came to into the world in an official sense. Yeah, and it's weird. Like, I think about, like, if I say that to people, I'm like, 5 books. I wrote 5 books before this one. They're like, oh my God, you like wasted all that time writing these books and like nothing ever happened. I'm like, thank God. Those books are terrible. I think one is like a Pirates of the Caribbean ripoff, like where the main character is like some clairvoyant pirate or something. Another one was what was it? It was like a Lord of the Rings ripoff. Like, you know, all of these books. Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time on them and stuff, but, you know, they helped me get all that rubbish out of my system before I wrote this one. And also, every time you write a book, and I'm sure it's the same for like people who've written like 20 books and who are multi-million-dollar authors or whatever, I think every time you write a book, you will learn something. And so if you've written a bunch before your first one comes out into the world, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. You're constantly learning. You learn how to craft your plot, how to weave things throughout an entire book. Like, you know, it's all invaluable lessons that you'll put towards that book that will come out into the world. So yeah, 5. I think it's about 5.
Okay. And how long did it take you until you had your first book published, which is now? How many years since you started your writing journey?
I don't know. I guess you could say like my whole life, basically. I've been writing since I was 7. I remember writing my first story when I was 7, and like, I mean, yeah, it was in like some little notepad, and it was like for a school class or whatever. But I remember writing that story, and I remember what it was about. So I mean, from then till now, it was nearly my whole life, which is 27 years. Well, about 20 years, because I was 7 when that happened. But yeah,
I remember writing my first story, and I was also about 7 or 8. And I remember what it was about. It was about a plane crash, which was, I think, quite weird for an 8-year-old to be writing about.
Wow, that's heavy for an 8-year-old.
I
think mine was about a clown at the circus who was it was a clown and a kitten, and they were friends, and the crowd didn't like their performance and they threw oranges at them or something. Aww. And that was the story.
Cute.
Yours is far more like in-depth and hardcore. Geez, a plane crash.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. So I'd obviously seen something on TV or something that sparked it. Yeah. What kind of research do you do, and how long do you research before you actually start writing, or do you just make everything up?
That's the thing, because it's fantasy. There's a lot more like creative freedom. I mean, I've researched things like weaponry. I've researched like clothing and stuff, because I think for my fantasy anyway, I always have it kind of in the back of my head, like it's almost like in a medieval kind of setting. So there's like corsets, there's swords, there's horses and saddles and castles. And so my research definitely kind of veers more towards making sure that I get kind of details like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be accurate as such, because like it's not that book is in medieval times. It's just kind of inspired by that, I guess. But I do like to make sure that, you know, when I'm saying he put his sword back into the scabbard or whatever, that's actually correct, that a sword goes into a scabbard, or, you know, when you knock an arrow into a bow, that's what you're doing. So, I mean, those sorts of things. I think I have my planning stage, which we talked a little bit about, and then research for me, it's not like I sit down and have a big research session. I think for me, when I'm writing and I stop and I'm like, is that correct? Or what's it called when, you know, a leather piece that goes over a man's shirt, what's that called, like in that time? And then I'll stop and research it, or I'll note them down and go back and research them later.
All right, cool. What is the most difficult thing for you when writing characters and developing characters?
For me, I always find appearance really hard, and I think that's supposed to be the easy part. But I find it really difficult to make sure that, you know, each character has like a distinctive feature without being cliche, or without, you know, making them a caricature. I want to make sure that you kind of give your reader a kind of signifier to say, oh, that's that character. And you don't want it to be, oh, the blonde character or the brunette character. And I think I definitely, in those first drafts, everybody's just got a hair color that I remember. And then I go back and kind of sculpt them in a bit more detail. So I definitely struggle with appearance, I think, more than anything.
And how many hours a day do you write?
That's hard, because I mean, I try to write every day. But, you know, as a writer yourself, you'd know that either it's hard because you can't get into it one day, or you've got other commitments, or, you know, you're trying to do freelance work or do your day job or whatever it is. Things get in the way. So for me, I do write every day, but I mean, that could be on the train for 20 minutes on the way into the office, or it could be for 6 hours when I have a day to myself. So I think I work best when I do have a big chunk of time, so you can actually sink into the story and get really involved. But it's not a perfect world. I don't have 6 hours every day to do that, which is a shame. But what can you do?
And what was the hardest scene for you to write in Heart of Mist, without giving away too much about the book?
Yeah, see, the hardest part for me was actually writing the ending, so I really can't go into too much detail. I think, and I've found this with writing the second book as well. When it's reaching towards the end of the book, I just want to race. I want to race to get there. And, things get lost, or, details don't unfold, or the pacing is off and things like that. So it's definitely hard to get all that stuff right. And it's also hard to kind of identify where that book should end, particularly if you're writing a series, because, you don't want to upset anybody by ending it on a cliffhanger where everything's unresolved, but also you don't want everything to be resolved because it's got to lead into that next book. So I think I definitely struggled the most with the ending. And I discussed that with my beta readers quite a lot, like where that should end. I always knew what I wanted it to feel like when it ended, but knowing that exact scene was quite hard.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's really interesting, because I do exactly the same. I race at the end. It's a big problem, and I think a lot of the time you've got a lot more of the story in your head, but to just get it out there, it doesn't always happen.
Absolutely, 100% agree.
How long on average does it take you to write a book?
Generally a couple of months, I think. So I wrote the first draft of Heart of Mist in NaNoWriMo, so National Novel Writing Month. So you're supposed to do the 50,000 words in a month. Yeah. And so I think my first draft of Heart of Mist, I think, was about 65 or 70,000 words. And I wrote that in about 6 weeks. And obviously that was really, really rough. That was a very rough draft. So, yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that I can hammer out the first draft of a novel in a couple of months. Yeah. And that's how it's generally been in previous situations as well. But then obviously to make it into something that is actually resembling a book, then it takes quite a long time.
My first completed manuscript was also a NaNoWriMo project.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
It's a great thing to like kind of do that with other people. I think it's really like motivating. You can't do it all the time, but when you do it, it's really rewarding.
I think especially for new writers, and when you're just starting, it's really good to have that motivation and the drive, because a lot of the time I think that you can just land up wafting around and forgetting about a manuscript if you don't actually sit down every day and do it.
Absolutely. I was lucky enough that two of my best friends through Writers Edit, the website I run, two of them were also working on big projects. And so the three of us said, right, let's do this together. And we set up like a little Facebook group where we kind of checked in with each other's progress and stuff. So, you have the big overall NaNoWriMo community, but then we also had like a little kind of drilled down community as well, where we could check in with each other, which was fantastic.
Oh, lovely. Okay, so the next part is the think quick question.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you options or just a quick question, and you answer it as quickly as you can.
Okay, go for it.
All right. So, music or lyrics?
Music, for sure.
Have you read a book over and over again, and which book?
Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I don't know how many times. Oh, and of course Harry Potter.
Sweet or salty?
Salty, definitely. I'm not a sweet tooth at all.
Your favorite ice cream flavor?
Mint choc chip.
And your favorite vacation place?
The Lake District in the UK, where Beatrix Potter was from.
Any guilty pleasures?
Oh, so many, but mainly trash TV. Love some trash TV. I think particularly like as writers, you're caught up in your own head so much, and you're always constantly like thinking, like overthinking. And so when you just like pop some trash TV on, like The Bachelor or something, oh, it's brilliant.
Okay. Do you have a good luck charm?
No, I don't think I do actually. I mean, I always take a notebook anywhere, but it's not like one special notebook. I just feel like I have to have that on me.
And when you were little, you thought you'd grow up to be?
Other than a writer, so I've wanted to be a writer since I was at least 7, but I'm told that before then I wanted to be a clown.
Oh, well, hence the
which I don't know why.
clown.
Yeah, I'm not particularly funny, so I don't really get that. But apparently it was a clown.
Okay. Bookmark or dog ear?
Oh, bookmark for sure. I don't like messing up my books.
What are you currently reading?
I'm currently reading Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas because it just came out 2 days ago. Got it delivered to my Kindle straight away, and I really just want to lock myself up and read it, but I've just got too much to do.
Okay, and then the last part is just a little bit of advice. What advice would you give writers?
I get asked this question like quite a lot, and I think it always depends on what situation I'm in at the time. So I think for me, because I'm in that kind of first draft mindset at the moment, I would definitely tell other writers not to worry about making things perfect straight off the bat. Yeah, I guess it goes back to the whole Ernest Hemingway, write drunk, edit sober. I think that's a great piece of advice. You know, let yourself, when you're writing that first draft, let yourself get caught up in the moment. Let yourself like have fun and really enjoy that process, and don't worry about making it perfect. You can make it perfect later. So yeah, I guess that's what I'd say.
I love that too. And then what book do you think everyone should read?
That's such a hard question because everybody has such like different tastes. I would always say Harry Potter. I think Harry Potter is the classic of my generation. It just, I grew up with it, so all of my friends grew up with it, and it's a perfect series that just takes you on this epic journey with all these different characters, and they're all so different. And I could rave about Harry Potter all day, every day. Yes. So definitely Harry Potter. But I think also being a writer, you understand that everybody does have such different tastes, and it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. So, but for me, Harry Potter for sure.
I don't think I've ever met anyone that hasn't enjoyed reading Harry Potter.
I'm sure I have. Really? I'm sure I've met people who like, I tried reading the first book, I couldn't really get into it, or you meet people who never read it at all, and who like are very determined not to read it now because it became such a big phenomena. Wow, crazy, crazy people.
Crazy people. I don't know what they're thinking.
Yeah, exactly. That's my thoughts on it anyway.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. It was so nice to get to know you and to hear a little bit more about Heart of Mist. As I said, I love the book. It does not read like a debut novel either. So the 5 manuscripts that you wrote before were worth it.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear that you've been enjoying it. I certainly enjoyed writing it, and hopefully that comes through. I think that probably does come through in that.
It really does. And I can see how, your friends would say that you're so passionate about it, because I think the whole, that you get that through reading it. And everything just seems so well thought out, and it's not as if, to me, there's no gaps in the world. Everything just flows and everything just works, and I think it's you can see that you're passionate about it.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, that makes me very happy.
Well, thanks so much, and I hope you have a fantastic evening.
Oh, you too. It's been really wonderful talking to you. It's crazy. You're in South Africa, I'm in Australia, but we're talking, and it's fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you so much for all your insightful questions too. I really loved all of them. I haven't got many of these before, and I've done a few interviews lately, so that's fantastic. Thank you.